they put a fan on you to keep the mosquitoes off during the night. And I'll never forget the tick-ticks, the little geckos. They were there in the house, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm sleeping on this mattress on the floor, and I'm thinking, what if one of those geckos drops on my face or something in the middle of the night?
How did I get here? How did I get interested in being in Asia, Philippines, Southeast Asia, and what got me here? We're going to talk about that, and maybe my story is similar to yours. We'll find out.
Okay, we're heading toward High Street. We're going to go to One Bonifacio and meet a friend for lunch at Chili's, Western style. But I want to talk about my journey here, and if you're living in the Philippines or Southeast Asia like I am, or if you've been thinking about moving here, or at least visiting for an exploratory visit to see if it's something that you might want to do as far as making a new permanent home for you, if you're thinking about retiring, or you're recently retired and you just don't like the life you're living where you're at in the West, and you're interested in Southeast Asia. Here's my story. Here's how I got there. So I've been interested, infatuated, if you will, with the Asian culture and Asian women in particular since I was a little kid. So remember when you were young, and if you're my age, when you were young, growing up, you watched all those old Japanese sci-fi movies, Godzilla and Rodan and Mothra and all those. Now, those are all movies from the 50s, but we got to see them on TV on, late night Saturday nights, and we got to watch all those and really loved them. And there was one in particular, Mothra, about a giant moth, go figure. But what really got me, I think back to my younger years, and I think back, what got me interested in the Asian culture? What got me interested in, gave me that attraction to Asian women? And it was that movie that did it. There's a part of that movie where they go to this island where Mothra is in his cocoon, but they find these two small people, well, they're Japanese, obviously, because it's a Japanese movie. But they capture these two ladies, and they take them back to Tokyo, and they basically exploit them. They put them on stage, these huge shows, and they sing, and they come out in this little tiny carriage. And they're maybe the size of Barbie dolls. But they sing this song, and the song was so, for me, being 6, 7 years old, was so mesmerizing, so captivating. And the girls were so amazingly beautiful that I was smitten. I was instantly attracted to those two. And from that point on, I've always really liked the look of Asian women. And it moves on into, when I'm getting a little older, and there's my mom always watched musicals. And my sisters, my three older sisters, always watched musicals. And one of the musicals they watched was Flower Drum Song. And it had to do with, was it all Chinese or all Asian cast? And there was a girl in that movie who came over from China in the movie and was supposed to be married off. All right. So this young actress, there was another part of me that was smitten by her, and she later played the housekeeper in the TV series Courtship of Eddie's Father, which I watched religiously because of that, because of her. And I had such a huge crush on her. And throughout the years, you know, my youth and even into my young adulthood, I've always had this part of me that really loved Asian women. And it's always stuck with me. And, you know, I never really thought much about it as far as the dating scene goes because, you know, I was in America and I never dreamed of even visiting overseas, let alone living over here, until after my divorce. And this was like 2013 maybe. I was working at a technical college in Indianapolis, and there was this lady that would come and clean. It was a small, just a 2 floors, smaller campus. But this lady would come every day and clean. She would, you know, empty the garbage, sweep the floors, clean the bathrooms, whatever. So she was Asian. She was Filipina. And I would see her get dropped off every morning by this older guy. He had to have been 70 in this old beat up red pickup truck. He'd drop her off in the morning and then he'd pick her up at night after her work was done. She was probably maybe 30, maybe 35. And, you know, it's hard for me to tell because Asians age so well. But I got to thinking, it's like, if this guy can do that, why can't I? Why can't I get, you know, then so I started getting interested again in Asians again. And that really, you know, that really did it for me. That was the moment, that was my aha moment where I saw this guy, and I was a lot younger than him, and he had this really cute Filipina wife. I assume it was his wife. So that was my aha moment. Why not me? So that's when I started going to dating sites, and I started, I think it was Date in Asia or something like that. Philippine Cupid, maybe. I don't know. I don't remember which sites it was. But I started going on these sites, and you know, in 2015, I think it was, I started chatting with this Filipina who was at OFW overseas in Hong Kong. And so we chatted, and we would FaceTime all the time, you know, and of course she only had 1 day off a week, so we would do a lot of FaceTime on her nights off. But we started a long distance relationship, and that kind of grew, you know, and before you ask, no, I never sent her any money. She had her own job. She had 2 kids that lived in the province in northern Luzon in Cabanatuan. So we planned on meeting in the Philippines for the first time when she got her vacation during the Christmas break. And so I had never had a passport before in my life, so I went and got my passport, and I remember October, I got my passport, and I was so excited. And I FaceTimed her and showed her my passport, and we were both super excited. And so December comes, and boy, that ticket was expensive. when you fly out here in December, you're going to pay premium price. And I did. I think it was back then, this was December 2015, for a round trip ticket out of Chicago. And this was one of the cheaper coach flights where I think I flew into San Francisco, and then from San Francisco to Hawaii, and then from Hawaii to Tokyo maybe, and then Tokyo to Manila. So there were a lot of stops. But it still cost me about $2,500, I think, something like that. So it wasn't cheap. But I got there, and she met me at the airport, and we spent a couple of days in Manila, and it was fantastic. And then we took a bus up to Cabanatuan, Nueva Ecija, and to meet her kids and to meet her mom and her grandmother. And they all lived in one area. They had rice. They had rice fields. That was their income. They were farmers. But that bus ride was very memorable. There was no AC. It was packed. We were one of the last ones on the bus, so all the seats were taken. But if you're familiar with the Philippines, there's no such thing as capacity. There's no such thing as capacity in the Philippines. The capacity is always one more. So they had these 8x2 planks that they would put between between the seats, and then you would sit on the planks. So my girlfriend and I, we had to sit on the plank, and for 4 hours, no back rest, just sitting on the plank, no AC. It was December, so it was a little cooler, but it was still probably 85, 90 degrees, and probably warmer in the bus. But we sat there for 4 hours, and I'll never forget. It kept stopping. If you remember the old Greyhounds, where you're not on the interstate, you're just taking a highway. In every small town, you pull in, and somebody gets off, somebody gets back on. That's how these buses in the Philippines run. You ride for a little while, then you pull off, and somebody gets on, and somebody gets off. But the first stop they made was maybe 15 minutes out of town, out of Manila. And this guy gets on the bus, and he's selling food, right? And everybody but me bought this bag of food. And what it was pork rinds. So if you can imagine a bus full of Filipino and me, I was the only Westerner, but a bus full, and each had their own bag of pork rinds, and they're crunching, and my back's hurting, and it's hot, and I'm sweating. I could laugh about it now, but I wasn't laughing then. My first experience going in the provinces, 2 days on my first trip to the Philippines. So that was interesting, but I can laugh now. But I tell you what, it's something you'll never forget. It's very memorable. So that was my first experience, and it was beautiful up there. It was, you have all those rice paddies, rice fields, and the weather was nice, and just really enjoyed my stay there. It was interesting because they didn't have beds. They had just one mattress on the floor, and everybody slept on the mattress on the floor. And they put a fan on you to keep the mosquitoes off during the night. And I'll never forget the tick-ticks, the little geckos. They were there in the house, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm sleeping on this mattress on the floor, and I'm thinking, what if one of those geckos drops on my face or something in the middle of the night? Of course, it didn't happen, but me being a newbie, that was another experience. But yeah, it's odd to see little lizards crawling up the wall inside a house. You don't see that in the U.S. or probably hardly any Western countries. But yeah, so it was definitely an experience that I'll never forget. But we ended up breaking up. We had a great week together, 2 weeks maybe it was, and she went back to Hong Kong for her job, and I went back to the U.S., and it was a horrible flight. I won't say the name of the airline. It was a domestic out of the U.S., but it was horrible. My charging station and my seat did not work, so my phone and my laptop, everything died mid-flight, and the food was bad. I had a huge layover on New Year's Eve in San Francisco airport, where they kept delaying the flight, and then they canceled it because they didn't have a crew. They're like, how do you schedule a flight and not have a crew? So I spent New Year's Eve in San Francisco airport, ringing in the new year, 2016, and then I finally made it on New Year's Day in the afternoon. I finally made it to Chicago, to O'Hare, where my sister picked me up, and went back to Indianapolis where I lived. But so yeah, that whole trip was really interesting. And good morning, sir. So, but I was hooked at that point. I was like, that's it. But we ended up breaking up. I won't say the reason. It wasn't me. I will say that. But I wasn't done that. I thought, okay, this is it. I'm done with Western women. I'm only going to look for Asian women. So I got back on the dating site and started chatting with a couple of Filipina, and one of them had just gotten out of a relationship, and I had just gotten out of a relationship. So we've been chatting for a couple of months. So in like April of 2016, we decided we were going to be a couple and do that LDR thing again. And so I made a plan. Hello, how are you? So I made a plan to make the trip back. And so we started dating. We dated quite a while, and I got very close to her and her kids, and I'm still close to her kids. We talk all the time still, because they really don't have a father figure to speak of, so I'm kind of their father figure. But so that lasted until 2020, and I was here to do the whole K1 visa thing. We had everything done, paid all the money, everything except for the interview for her. And at the last minute, she decided she didn't want to get married, didn't want to move back to the U.S. So we broke up. But let me rewind a little bit. Let me go back a little bit, talk about, so I'm here at Chili's, just going to wait for a friend. But let's talk about 2016. After I broke up with my first Filipina girlfriend, I decided that I really wanted to live in Asia. So I started looking for work, and I was out of work at the time, and I was living in Oklahoma, and I was looking for work, and I started going online looking at these English as a second language teaching jobs in Asia. And I got hired. I got offered a job in this company to work in China, and I got to pick where I wanted to work. And this was right before I broke up with my first Filipina girlfriend. And one of the places was Shenzhen, China, which is just north of Hong Kong. So I thought that would be perfect, because then I could just take a train or a bus or whatever down to Hong Kong on the weekends to see her, or she can come up see me. So I had the contract. It was a 15-month contract that was signed and ready to send in. And the day I was going to send it in, I got a job offer for a director of admissions in Louisville, Kentucky. And I stayed in my comfort zone because it was kind of scary thinking of moving overseas. And so I stayed in my comfort zone, and I took the job in Louisville. And ever since that point, I regretted it. I regretted that choice. Now, I worked a few different campuses from 2016 to 2021, and was making really good money. And I ended up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I was actually I was between jobs, and I was interviewing with an international um, university based out of California, but they had a guy based in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and he interviewed me for a director of admissions for their Tulsa, Oklahoma, or their Midwest division. And he was talking, and we were having lunch and doing the interview, and he was talking about, yeah, we've got students in the U.S., Canada, Mexico, Central America, South America, Europe, even Western Africa. And I go, hey, if you ever get a division in Asia, let me know. I'm your guy. And he goes, well, funny you should say that because we're actually looking at expanding into the Asian market. So I said, oh, okay, cool. And I didn't know what their timeline was. And in fact, I didn't know if I even got the job. So we left, shook hands, left. He told me later, they hired me. And he told me later that as soon as he got out of the meeting with me, he called the president of the university and said, we got our guy for China or for Asia. So he called me up. I don't know if it was that same day or the next day, or I don't know what the timeline was, but he offered me the job, and it wasn't, the pay wasn't as good as what I was used to making, but it was still really, really good for living in Asia, and especially in the Philippines. So at that point, it was still 2021, and it was September, and nothing was open yet here. You couldn't come here because of COVID. So we were still waiting. So I did a lot of research on where to set up my operations. I'm looking for well-spoken English because I had to hire locals. So I was looking at I needed good internet, I needed good Wi-Fi, and good electricity, so no brownouts. So I started watching a lot of YouTubers like Gio in the Philippines and Evan from Savvy Expat and some of those guys. So just kind of know what it was like. I was watching Retired Working for You in Thailand and a couple other guys in Thailand. So, got to understand, do I go to Bangkok? Do I go to Kuala Lumpur? Do I go to Manila or the Philippines? And I narrowed it down to those three choices. And in the end, I figured the Philippines was my best option. BGC was my best option. Everything it ticked all the boxes. It's good internet, good, fast, reliable internet, no brownouts, no flooding, none of this stuff. English was well spoken here, so I could hire a local team. And so that's what I did. I ended up so as soon as we got word that the Philippines was opening in February of 2022, I booked my ticket, I booked my flight and came out here. All right, just finished lunch at Chili's with a buddy. So let's head down High Street on the way back. And boy, it looks like we might get some rain. It's been about 5 months, I think, since we've seen any substantial rain here. So we're in that heat wave right now. So back to my story. I always regretted not taking that teaching job in China. So I made it a point to, when I got the opportunity again to work and live in Asia, I took it. So when that international job came open and they hired me, it was awesome. And then February 2022 was when I booked my flight. Actually, March of 2022 is when I got out here. So I've been here just over 2 years, and I haven't regretted it. Even after my job ended last year, at the end of beginning of 2023, end of 2022, I decided I was going to stay here. I had some job opportunities back in the States, but I didn't want to go back. I didn't want to go back to the States. I was just done. And so I decided that I'm going to retire. So I ended up retiring. I put pen to paper, figured I could retire early and live here, even in BGC, and still have a very comfortable life. And it's been great. You know, I make enough money where I can live within my means, have a decent life, have a comfortable life, still travel all over Asia, and just enjoy life. And I don't regret 1 minute retiring early. It's been fantastic, and it's been a great thing. And I'm super excited about the future. You know, I'm in a really nice condo. I really like it. I'm paying like $600 a month for my condo. I've got everything I need right now, and you know, the future's bright. It's a Friday afternoon here. It's not really that hot today, so it's a little overcast, so that's probably why. Looks like they got some fun festivities planned for the weekend here. Like always here in BGC in High Street, they always have things going on. But that's my story, and that's kind of why, even from youth, I've always been infatuated with the Asian culture and Asian ladies, and I don't think I'll ever go back to dating a Western woman. I don't think that's ever going to happen again. So I'd like to hear about your story. You know, what got you interested in, you know, coming here to the Philippines or coming to Asia? What was it? What was your aha moment? I told you mine. Put in the comments down below what your aha moment was and what your interests are of the Philippines and Southeast Asia. I would love to hear it. And of course, as always, like, share, and subscribe. And if you want to know a little bit more about how to get over here and the things you need, check out the video above. And we'll see you on the next time. Until then, mabuhay. Live life, my friend. And we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.